The Shadow Hunters. The Vorthak Empire had ruled the outer rim of the galaxy for 3 millennia. Their sleek obsidian warships moved through space like shadows, appearing without warning to devastate any civilization that dared expand beyond their designated boundaries. With their elongated bodies, razor-sharp claws, and eyes that could see in complete darkness, the Vorthak were the embodiment of evolutionary perfection, the ultimate predators in a universe full of prey. When their long-range scouts detected human activity in the Epsilon sector, Warlord Kreznar felt nothing but contempt. The reports described a primitive species, barely 2 centuries into space travel, establishing mining colonies on barren worlds. Their ships were slow, their weapons outdated, and their bodies fragile. To the Vorthak, who had conquered 100 civilizations, humans appeared to be nothing more than another easy target. Kreznar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Shadowclaw, studying the holographic display of human settlements. His lieutenant Veltor approached with updated intelligence. The humans have established 7 colonies in this sector, Warlord. Their defenses are minimal, mostly automated turrets and light patrol vessels. How disappointing. Kreznar's voice rumbled like distant thunder. I had hoped for at least a modest challenge. What of their military capabilities? Primitive projectile weapons and basic energy shields. Their largest warship is 1/3 the size of our smallest destroyer. Veltor's mandibles clicked in amusement. They call it a battlecruiser. Kreznar's lips curled back, revealing rows of serrated teeth. Then we shall make quick work of them. Prepare the hunting packs. We strike at dawn. The first attack came to Epsilon 7, a mining colony on the edge of human space. The colonists had been extracting rare minerals from the planet's crust, unaware that they had already been marked for destruction. The Vorthak ships emerged from hyperspace without warning, their dark hulls nearly invisible against the void of space. Mining supervisor Jake Morrison was in the middle of his morning coffee when the alarms began blaring. He rushed to the command center, where his staff was frantically trying to make sense of the sensor readings. What's happening? Jake demanded. Unknown vessels approaching fast. Communications officer Lisa Park reported. They're not responding to our hails. How many? 7. No, 12. Wait, the sensors are going crazy. I can't get a clear reading. That was the Vorthak's first advantage. Their ships were equipped with scatter fields that confused most scanning technology. By the time the colonists realized what was happening, it was too late. The Vorthak struck with surgical precision. Their ships released swarms of attack drones that disabled the colony's defensive systems within minutes. Then came the drop pods, sleek, black capsules that pierced through the atmosphere like spears, delivering Vorthak warriors directly to the surface. Jake watched in horror through the security monitors as the aliens emerged. They moved with impossible speed, their dark forms blurring as they tore through the colony's defenses. The few security personnel who tried to resist were overwhelmed instantly. Get everyone to the emergency shelters, Jake shouted, but he knew it was futile. The Vorthak weren't interested in occupation. They were here to hunt. Dr. Sarah Chen, the colony's chief scientist, was in her laboratory when the attack began. She had been studying unusual energy readings from the planet's core, but now her attention was drawn to the chaos outside. Through her window, she could see colonists running in panic as dark shapes pursued them. One of the Vorthak warriors stopped directly outside her lab, and Sarah found herself face to face with humanity's new enemy. The creature stood nearly 8 feet tall, its body covered in chitinous armor that seemed to absorb light. Its eyes, 6 of them, arranged in pairs, glowed with a sickly yellow luminescence. Sarah expected to die in that moment, but the Vorthak merely observed her with what seemed like curiosity. Then it turned and continued its hunt, leaving her unharmed. She realized with growing horror that the Vorthak were being selective. They were choosing their prey based on some unknown criteria. Over the next hour, Sarah watched and documented everything she could about the attackers. She noticed patterns in their behavior. They avoided certain individuals while relentlessly pursuing others. They seemed to be testing the colonists, evaluating their responses to fear and stress. When, The Vorthak finally withdrew. They left behind a devastated colony. Of the 3,000 colonists, only a third remained alive. The survivors gathered in the central plaza, traumatized and confused. "Why did they spare some of us?" someone asked. Sarah had been wondering the same thing. She reviewed her observations, looking for patterns among the survivors. Then it hit her. The Vorthak had spared those who hadn't run, those who had faced their fear. They were looking for something specific in their prey. The attacks continued across human space. Colony after colony fell to the Vorthak hunting packs. News of the devastation spread quickly, causing panic throughout human civilization. The United Earth Defense Force scrambled to respond, but their ships were too few and too scattered to mount an effective defense. Admiral Marcus Stone, commander of the Third Fleet, received the distress calls with growing alarm. He had spent his entire career preparing for potential alien threats, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Vorthak weren't just military opponents. They were predators who viewed humans as sport. "We need to evacuate the outer colonies," his tactical officer suggested. "Pull everyone back to the core worlds where we can mount a proper defense." Stone shook his head. "That's what they expect us to do. Look at the pattern of attacks. They're hurting us, driving us toward the center. If we run, we're playing right into their hands. Then what do we do?" Stone studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. Everything about the Vorthak spoke of apex predators, their tactics, their technology, even their choice of targets. But predators had weaknesses. They were accustomed to prey that followed predictable patterns. "We need to stop thinking like prey," Stone said finally. "It's time to show these aliens what humans are really capable of." The Admiral's words would prove prophetic. Unknown to the Vorthak, their attacks had awakened something primal in humanity, not fear but determination. The survivors of the attacked colonies began sharing information, documenting Vorthak tactics and technology. Scientists like Dr. Chen worked tirelessly to understand their enemy, while military leaders like Admiral Stone developed new strategies. The Vorthak had made a critical error in their assessment of humanity. They saw our physical weakness and assumed we were easy prey. They didn't understand that humans had survived and thrived on Earth not through strength or speed, but through intelligence and adaptability. They didn't realize that by attacking us, they had united our species in a way that nothing else could have. Krasnar received reports of the successful raids with satisfaction. The humans were falling back as expected, their colonies abandoned or destroyed. Soon he would lead the final assault on their homeworld, adding another trophy to the Vorthak Empire's collection. "The humans are weaker than we thought," Veltor observed. "Perhaps we should have sent fewer ships." "Do not underestimate them," Krasnar warned, though he privately agreed. "Even the smallest prey can surprise when cornered." He had no idea how right he was. In secret facilities across human space, a massive mobilization was underway. The Nightfall Initiative, humanity's answer to the Vorthak threat, was taking shape. Scientists, engineers, and military strategists worked around the clock, developing new technologies and tactics specifically designed to counter the Vorthak's advantages. Dr. Chen's research had revealed crucial weaknesses in Vorthak physiology. Their enhanced vision, while excellent in darkness, could be overwhelmed by certain light frequencies. Their scatter fields, while effective against conventional sensors, had telltale energy signatures that could be detected with the right equipment. Most importantly, the Vorthak's hunting instincts could be used against them. They were accustomed to prey that ran or cowered. They had never faced a species that could turn from prey to predator in an instant. The first phase of humanity's counterattack began not with massive fleet movements, but with small, specialized strike teams. These units, trained in guerrilla warfare and equipped with prototype weapons, infiltrated Vorthak-controlled space. Their mission wasn't to win decisive battles, but to gather intelligence and test new tactics. The Vorthak's first indication that something had changed came when a supply depot in the Outer Rim was destroyed. The attack had been swift and precise, leaving no survivors to report what had happened. Krasnar dismissed it as an isolated incident, perhaps the work of pirates or scavengers. Then more facilities were hit. Vorthak patrols began disappearing without a trace. Hunting packs sent to investigate found only empty space and debris. For the first time in their history, the Vorthak found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't see or predict. These attacks are coordinated, Veltor reported after analyzing the pattern. The humans are using new tactics. Impossible, Kreznar snarled. They lack the technology and the courage. These must be the actions of another species. But deep down, he began to feel something he hadn't experienced in centuries: uncertainty. The humans weren't behaving like any prey the Vorthak had faced before. They weren't running or hiding. They were adapting, learning, evolving their tactics with each encounter. As the Vorthak Empire mobilized its forces for a final, crushing assault on human space, they remained unaware of the transformation taking place within their prey. Humanity had looked into the face of extinction and found, not despair but resolve. The hunters were about to learn what it meant to become the hunted. In the darkness of space, human ships moved like ghosts, their newly developed stealth systems rendering them nearly invisible. The Nightfall Initiative had produced technologies that seemed impossible just months before. Weapons designed to exploit Vorthak weaknesses, shields that could withstand their energy weapons, and most importantly, a unity of purpose that turned humanity's greatest weakness, their diversity, into their greatest strength. The Vorthak had awakened something ancient in the human genome, a survival instinct forged in the crucible of evolution. They had made the mistake of seeing humans as prey, not realizing that on Earth, humans had been both predator and prey, learning from each role to become something entirely unique. As Kreznar prepared his fleet for the final assault, he received a transmission from the human admiral he'd been hunting. The message was simple. You came to our space seeking prey. You found predators instead. This is your only warning. Leave now or face the consequences. The warlord's response was predictable. He laughed, viewing the message as the desperate bluff of a doomed species. He ordered his fleet to advance, confident in the superiority of Vorthak technology and tactics. He would soon learn that the greatest predators were not those with the sharpest claws or the strongest bodies, but those with the will to survive and the intelligence to adapt. The humans had spent months studying their enemy, learning their weaknesses and preparing for this moment. The first battle of human space was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The first blood, the Vorthak Armada, emerged from hyperspace like a plague of locusts, their dark ships blotting out the stars. Kreznar had assembled the largest hunting fleet in Vorthak history, over 300 vessels, each one a masterpiece of predatory design. Their destination, the human colony world of New Athena, a strategic hub that connected the outer colonies to Earth itself. On the bridge of the Shadowclaw, Kreznar savored the moment. The humans had pulled back most of their defenses to protect their core worlds, leaving New Athena relatively exposed. It would be the perfect demonstration of Vorthak superiority. Warlord, Veltor announced, our sensors detect minimal human presence. Only 37 vessels, mostly civilian transports and light frigates. As expected, Kreznar replied. Begin the hunt. I want survivors to spread word of what happens to those who defy the Vorthak Empire. The first wave of Vorthak ships surged forward, their weapons powered up and targeting systems locked onto the human vessels. What happened next would be recorded in Vorthak military archives as the impossible moment. The human ships vanished, not destroyed, not fleeing. They simply disappeared from every sensor, every visual scan. For several seconds, the Vorthak fleet hung in space, confused and suddenly vulnerable. Then the counterattack began. Admiral Marcus Stone watched from the bridge of the UES Phantom, humanity's first stealth battleship, as the Vorthak fleet fell into confusion. The Nightfall Initiative had produced many innovations, but the ghost field technology was their masterpiece. A combination of light-bending metamaterials and electromagnetic dampening that rendered ships nearly invisible to conventional detection. All ships execute Wolfpack Alpha, Stone commanded. Target their command vessels first, fire at will. The human fleet materialized in perfect attack formation, having used their stealth systems to maneuver into optimal positions. The first salvo caught the Vorthak completely off guard. New weapons designed specifically to penetrate Vorthak armor tore through their ship's defenses. The Shadowclaw shuddered as multiple impacts struck its hull. Kreznar roared in fury as damage reports flooded in. Return fire, all ships defensive, formations, but the humans had already vanished again, melting back into the darkness of space. The Vorthak weapons fired blindly, their targeting systems unable to lock onto enemies that seemed to exist only as ghosts. Warlord, Veltor's voice held an edge of panic. We've lost 7 ships in the first wave. Our sensors cannot track the human vessels. Impossible, Kreznar snarled. No species has technology beyond ours. Dr. Sarah Chen, observing the battle from a secure bunker on New Athena, allowed herself a grim smile. The Vorthak's arrogance had been their weakness. They assumed their technology was supreme, that their hunting tactics were infallible. They hadn't considered that humans might develop counters to their advantages. The ghost field technology was just one innovation. Human scientists had also created the Screamer missiles, weapons that emitted the same frequency as Vorthak scatter fields, causing their own defensive systems to malfunction. They had developed sunburst bombs that exploited the Vorthak's sensitive vision, creating blinding flashes of light that disabled their targeting systems. Most importantly, they had studied Vorthak psychology. The aliens were excellent hunters, but they had always been the dominant force. They didn't know how to respond when the roles were reversed. The battle continued for hours with human ships appearing and disappearing like phantoms. Each strike was precisely calculated, targeting command ships and supply vessels. The Vorthak fleet, despite its superior numbers, found itself in disarray. Commander Elena Vasquez, leading the strike team aboard the stealth frigate Nightwind, executed a particularly daring maneuver. Her ship materialized directly beneath a Vorthak destroyer, too close for the larger vessel's weapons to target effectively. In seconds, her crew had attached magnetic mines to the destroyer's hull before vanishing again. The explosions that followed crippled the Vorthak ship, leaving it drifting helplessly in space. Other human vessels followed similar tactics, using their smaller size and stealth technology to maximum advantage. Kreznar watched his perfect armada being torn apart by an enemy he couldn't see or predict. His hunters had become the hunted, and for the first time in his long life he felt the cold touch of fear. Warlord, Veltor reported, we've lost 20% of our fleet. Shall I order a retreat? Never. Kreznar's pride wouldn't allow it. Deploy the Seekers. If we cannot see them, we'll force them to reveal themselves. The Seekers were the Vorthak's elite tracking units, equipped with enhanced sensors and predictive algorithms. They spread out through the battlefield, searching for any sign of the hidden human ships. It was exactly what Admiral Stone had been waiting for. They're taking the bait, he announced. Strike teams execute Matador protocol. The human ships began a complex dance, appearing just long enough to draw Seeker attention before vanishing again. Each appearance led the Vorthak trackers further from their main fleet, stretching their formation thin. Then came the masterstroke. The humans had hidden a weapon in the debris field of a destroyed mining station, a massive electromagnetic pulse generator. When activated, it sent out a wave of energy that temporarily disrupted all electronic systems in the area. The Vorthak Seekers caught in the blast radius found their systems failing. In that moment of vulnerability, human ships materialized around them, weapons firing with deadly precision. The elite tracking units were eliminated in seconds, but the EMP had also revealed the positions of the human fleet. For a brief moment, both sides could see each other clearly. All ships charge weapons, Kreznar commanded. Destroy them while they're visible. The space between the fleets erupted in a storm of energy weapons and missiles. For the first time, the battle became a conventional engagement, with both sides trading devastating volleys. The human ships, smaller and more maneuverable, darted between the Vorthak formations. Their new shields, designed to specifically counter Vorthak energy weapons, held against the barrage. Meanwhile, their own weapons, calibrated to exploit weaknesses in Vorthak armor, inflicted terrible damage. Lieutenant Commander James Crawford, piloting a stealth fighter, performed an almost suicidal attack run on the Shadowclaw itself. His small craft, barely larger than a shuttle, wove through the battleship's defensive fire to deliver a critical strike to its main reactor. The explosion that followed lit up the battlefield like a miniature sun. The Shadowclaw, pride of the Vorthak fleet, listed to one side, its power systems failing. "Warlord, we must retreat," Veltor insisted. "The ship cannot sustain further damage." Kresnar's rage was terrible to behold, but even he could see the truth. His perfect hunting fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that had turned their own tactics against them. The humans hadn't just adapted, they had evolved, becoming something the Vorthak had never faced before. "Order the withdrawal," he growled, the words tasting like acid. "All ships retreat to the edge of the system." The remaining Vorthak vessels began to pull back, but the humans pressed their advantage. Ships appeared from every direction, harrying the retreating fleet. The hunters had become the hunted, and there was no mercy in the pursuit. As the Vorthak fleet limped away from New Athena, they left behind the wreckage of nearly 100 ships. The humans had lost only 12 vessels, a stunning reversal of what should have been a massacre. Admiral Stone watched the enemy retreat with mixed emotions. They had won a crucial victory, but he knew this was just the beginning. The Vorthak would return, and they would adapt. The war was far from over. "Send a message to Earth," he ordered. "Phase 1 of the Nightfall Initiative is complete. The Vorthak can be beaten." The news of the victory spread throughout human space like wildfire. For the first time since the attacks began, there was hope. The supposedly invincible Vorthak had been defeated, their perfect record of conquest broken by human ingenuity and determination. But the victory at New Athena had greater implications than anyone realized. The battle had been observed by other species, races that had lived in fear of the Vorthak for generations. The idea that the Empire could be challenged, that their hunters could become prey, sparked something across the galaxy. On the Vorthak homeworld, the High Council convened. In emergency session, the loss at New Athena was unprecedented, unthinkable. How had a primitive species developed such advanced technology so quickly? How had they turned the very essence of Vorthak warfare against them? The debate raged for hours, with some calling for immediate total war while others counseled caution. In the end, it was decided that Kresnar would be given one more chance to redeem himself. The entire might of the Vorthak Empire would be mobilized for a final, overwhelming assault. Meanwhile, in human space, the victory had galvanized the population. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers. Scientists worked around the clock to improve their technologies. The success of the Nightfall Initiative had proven that humanity could fight back, but everyone knew the real test was still to come. Dr. Chen, now advising the military directly, presented her latest findings to the War Council. "The Vorthak will adapt," she warned. "They're not stupid, just arrogant. They'll develop counters to our stealth technology, new tactics to combat our strategies. We need to stay ahead of them." Admiral Stone nodded gravely. "Then we'll adapt too. We'll show them that humans don't just survive, we evolve. We overcome, and we never ever give up." In the weeks that followed, both sides prepared for the next phase of the conflict. The Vorthak Empire, stung by their first defeat in millennia, mobilized resources from across their domain. Kresnar, his pride wounded but his determination intact, began developing new strategies to counter human tactics. The humans, riding high on their victory, continued to innovate. New weapons were developed, new tactics devised. The ghost field technology was improved, making ships even harder to detect. Networks of hidden bases were established throughout human space, creating a web of defensive positions. Most importantly, humanity began reaching out to other species who had suffered under Vorthak rule. The victory at New Athena had shown that the Empire was not invincible. Slowly, secretly, the seeds of an alliance began to form. The first blood had been drawn, and it belonged to the Vorthak. But the war was far from over. The true test of humanity's evolution from prey to predator was yet to come. The Vorthak Empire, with all its might and fury, was preparing to strike back. And this time, they would not underestimate their enemy. The turning tide. The Vorthak Empire's response to their defeat at New Athena was swift and terrible. Across their vast domain, ancient war machines were awakened from their slumber. Reserve fleets that hadn't seen action in centuries were mobilized. The Great Hunt, as they called it, would be the largest military operation in Vorthak history. Kreznar, despite his failure, retained command of the operation. The High Council had decided that his experience fighting the humans made him invaluable. But they paired him with Seeker Prime Thixar, a legendary hunter known for his ability to adapt to any prey. "The humans are clever," Thixar observed, studying the battle recordings from New Athena. "They use our instincts against us. We must abandon traditional hunting methods." Kreznar bristled at the criticism, but couldn't deny its truth. "What do you propose?" "We become unpredictable. We force them to react rather than plan, and we use their greatest strength, their unity, against them." The Vorthak's new strategy began with a series of seemingly random attacks across human space. Instead of targeting military installations or major colonies, they struck at civilian supply lines, research stations, and communication relays. The attacks were brutal but brief, with Vorthak forces withdrawing before human reinforcements could arrive. Admiral Stone recognized the tactic immediately. "They're trying to spread us thin," he told his command staff. "Force us to defend everything, while they pick their real targets." "So what do we do?" asked General Patricia Williams, commander of the Colonial Defense Force. "We don't play their game," Stone replied. "We make them play ours." The human response was unconventional. Instead of trying to defend every potential target, they began evacuating non-essential personnel from vulnerable locations. Hidden automated defense systems were installed, turning abandoned facilities into traps for Vorthak raiding parties. Meanwhile, human strike teams continued their ghost warfare, hitting Vorthak supply depots and communication nodes. The stealth technology had been improved further, incorporating lessons learned from the Battle of New Athena. The first major engagement of the new phase came at Kepler Station, a human research facility that the Vorthak had targeted for destruction. What they didn't know was that the station had been evacuated weeks earlier and turned into a massive trap. As the Vorthak fleet approached, confident in their intelligence about the station's importance, hidden weapons platforms activated. Entire asteroid fields came alive with defensive systems, catching the attackers in a deadly crossfire. But Thixar had anticipated some form of trap. What he hadn't expected was the humans' next move. "Warlord," a sensor operator reported, "we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. The humans, they're broadcasting in the clear. On every frequency and every language the humans were transmitting. Not military codes or tactical data, but stories, personal accounts of survival from the attacked colonies, messages of defiance and hope. Songs of resistance." "What is the purpose of this?" Kreznar demanded. Thixar's eyes narrowed. "Psychological warfare. They're not just fighting us, they're fighting for something. It makes them dangerous." The battle that followed was unlike anything the Vorthak had experienced. Human ships didn't just fight, they sacrificed themselves to protect others. Pilots rammed their damaged vessels into Vorthak cruisers. Engineers overloaded their reactors to create massive explosions. Every human fought as if the entire species depended on their actions. Commander Angela Rodriguez, leading a squadron of stealth bombers, executed a maneuver that would become legendary. With her ship critically damaged and her crew evacuated, she piloted it directly into the hangar bay of a Vorthak battleship, detonating her payload from inside the enemy vessel. The transmission she sent before impact was picked up across the system. "For every human you've hunted, for every life you've taken, this is our answer. We are not your prey. We are your reckoning." The Vorthak fleet, despite their numerical superiority, found themselves facing an enemy that simply wouldn't break. Every victory came at a terrible cost. Every human ship destroyed seemed to inspire 10 more to fight harder. Thixar observed the battle with growing unease. They fight like cornered animals, but with the coordination of a hive mind. How is this possible? The answer came from an unexpected source. During the battle, a human prisoner was brought before the Vorthak commanders. Dr. Michael Harrison, captured during an earlier raid, was a xenobiologist who had studied Vorthak physiology. "You want to know why we fight so hard?" Harrison said, his voice steady despite his situation. "Because we're not just fighting for ourselves. Every human who dies becomes a symbol, a reason for others to fight harder. You've made us stronger by attacking us." "Prey does not become stronger through predation," Kreznar snarled. "That's where you're wrong," Harrison replied. "On Earth we have a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You've tested us, pushed us to our limits, and we've evolved, we've become what we needed to be to survive." The battle at Kepler Station ended in a tactical draw, with both sides suffering heavy losses. But strategically, it was another human victory. The Vorthak had failed to achieve their objective, and more importantly, their aura of invincibility continued to crumble. In the aftermath, something unprecedented happened. A small convoy of ships approached the human defensive line, not Vorthak vessels but ships belonging to the Alteran Confederation, a species that had been under Vorthak domination for centuries. "We wish to speak with your leaders," the Alteran commander transmitted. "We have a proposal." The meeting that followed would change the course of the war. The Alterans, inspired by humanity's resistance, offered to share intelligence about Vorthak operations in exchange for protection. It was the first crack in the Vorthak Empire's control. Admiral Stone recognized the opportunity immediately. "This is how we win," he told his staff. "Not just by fighting, but by showing the galaxy that the Vorthak can be defeated. That freedom is possible." The alliance with the Alterans opened floodgates. Other species, long oppressed by Vorthak rule, began reaching out to humanity. The Nexari, master engineers who had been forced to build Vorthak ships. The Celestines, whose psychic abilities had been exploited for Vorthak intelligence gathering. The Void Dancers, whose knowledge of hyperspace had been crucial to Vorthak expansion. Each new ally brought unique capabilities, but more importantly, they brought hope. The war was no longer just humanity's fight. It was becoming a galactic revolution. The Vorthak High Council met in emergency session as reports of defections poured in. The empire that had stood for millennia was showing cracks, and it was all because of a species they had dismissed as primitive prey. "We must crush this rebellion before it spreads," one counselor demanded. "How?" another replied. "Every fleet we send returns diminished. Every world we punish creates more rebels. The humans have done something we never thought possible. They've made others believe they can win." Back in human space, the growing alliance was coordinating their efforts. The Alterans provided detailed maps of Vorthak space. The Nexari helped upgrade human ships with advanced technology. The Celestines enhanced communication systems, allowing for instantaneous coordination across vast distances. The Void Dancers revealed hidden routes through hyperspace, enabling surprise attacks on Vorthak installations. The first major joint operation was an assault on Vorthak Outpost Gamma-12, a strategic facility that controlled hyperspace routes to several subjugated systems. The attack combined human stealth technology, Alteran electronic warfare, Nexari engineering, and Void Dancer navigation. The outpost never stood a chance. Kreznar received the news with barely contained rage. First they defeat us, then they turn our subjects against us. These humans are not prey. They're a plague. Perhaps, Thixar mused, we have been thinking about this wrong. The humans are not acting like prey because they never were prey. They're something else entirely. What then? Survivors, adapters. On their world, they faced countless predators and natural disasters. They didn't become the dominant species through strength or speed, but through cooperation and innovation. We've awakened something that was always there. The war continued to escalate, but the momentum had shifted. Human tactics evolved constantly, incorporating new technologies and strategies from their allies. Vorthak forces found themselves fighting, not just humans, but a united front of species they had oppressed for generations. The siege of Vorthak Outpost Gamma 12 became a turning point. As human and allied forces breached the facility's defenses, they discovered something unexpected: archives containing the history of every species the Vorthak had conquered. Dr. Chen, part of the research team examining the archives, made a startling discovery. The Vorthak weren't always apex predators, she reported. They were once prey themselves, hunted by a species called the Devourers. They evolved, became hunters to survive. But they've forgotten that history. The revelation spread through both sides of the conflict. For the allied species, it was proof that even the mighty Vorthak could be overthrown. For the Vorthak themselves, it was a reminder of what they had forgotten: that predator and prey were not fixed roles, but part of an eternal cycle. Some Vorthak began to question their empire's path. Whispers of dissent arose in their ranks, carefully suppressed but growing stronger. The idea that they might not be the ultimate predators, that they might have become the very thing they once fled from, created cracks in their unified front. Krasnar, sensing the changing tide, proposed a desperate gambit to the High Council.